It's time for the best coverage of the top stories in sports. The Sports Wrap with Jason Page starts now.
Happy Friday. Yes, indeed. Thank you, Chad Erickson. Great to have you all with us for the next 60 minutes. Or if you just replay the show on a loop over and over and over again, you can do that too. Got a lot of fun we'll get to in the next 60 minutes. We're going to get into NASCAR because it is a NASCAR Friday, which means Tino Pattigno is here in all his golden splendor. The NHL playoffs took a bad turn for our Rangers last night. Not a very good result at Madison Square Garden. We will get into the result of that game, but we start things out in the NBA, where last night the Dallas Mavericks punched their ticket for the NBA Finals with a win, a convincing win at that, in Minnesota against the T-Wolves. And Sam Yarnell's here. Before we get to him, I just want to say, stop talking if you're Minnesota. Can you do less talking and more winning and more, accomplishing something before you start talking? You know what? Luka Doncic can talk. He is him. He can talk as much as he wants. Okay? And he was him before Kyrie Irving got there, and he's even a more magnified he is him since Kyrie did get there. Luka can talk all he wants. He put it in your face. He stuck it in your you-know-what. In a Game 5, everybody, including me, was convinced this thing would get back to Dallas for Game 6. We all saw how that turned out. I am amazed. I listen, from day one that I started watching Luka in this league, and I was saying this when we were doing the radio show and in the previous iteration of what we're doing now. When I watch Luka, what I come away with is similar to one other player in this league, and that's Nikola Jokic, from the perspective of they both know how to take a game that is so fast. If you go watch an NBA game live, on TV it doesn't play the same. You go watch a game live, you don't realize, one, how big and large these men are. The other thing, and how small they make the court look. And the other is how fast the game moves. Luka and Nikola Jokic have this innate ability to do something that I don't see any other player in the league able to do. And that is slow the game down to a crawl. It looks like they're playing the game at half speed. And it's all the time. And they're able to make the game work for them at their speed. He was fantastic last night. He went in there and absolutely took their eyes out in the first half of that game. There wasn't anything left for Minnesota to do in the second half except watch as the Mavericks celebrate, and they're headed to an NBA final. And Sam, Minnesota will be left to pick up the pieces and kind of figure out what they have to do to get to that next level. First time with this group making this kind of run, and I get that you got to kind of go through that experience. A lot of first-time playoff guys here that sort of had to go through this. But boy, it's all about Dallas to me right now.
100%, Jason. And I think the interesting thing about Luka is that he's like these great European soccer players that we see so frequently, right? Like your Cristiano Ronaldo. He'll be, casually just walking about, but then he gets the ball to his feet, or, Luka gets the ball in his hands and it's explosion. It's not like he's, this oversized, super strong guy or this insanely athletic guard like his teammate Kyrie Irving is, but he's got this, like you said, this innate ability to just to almost have the perfect tempo for the game and be able to just breeze by everybody. It's truly special to watch, and it was on full display last night against the Timberwolves. What a meltdown for that team, for the Timberwolves team. And my first thought, quite frankly, during the game was, do we think this is going to be will the Timberwolves find themselves back here soon? It felt kind of like a fluke to me. Like it felt last night like it was the ultimate exposure of the Timberwolves being this kind of they had one chance to do it.
It was a nice story. Yeah, right. You almost wonder if are they the Atlanta Hawks? Remember the Hawks
Right.
a few years ago had that deep run, or, it started to feel like the organization was putting it together, Trae Young, all of that. And then all of a sudden you look a few years later and they're, 7 coaches later, and you're trying to figure out, all right, is Trae Young staying or is Dejounte Murray going? You have no idea where that organization is going. I don't know if it's quite that bad. I think they have to get the ownership situation squared away with Alex Rodriguez and get all of that squared away through arbitration, which they're going to do, and mediation, which they're going to do. And then they've got to figure out, from a salary perspective as well, they are headed for financial peril because of the amount of money they already have to give Anthony Edwards. It's like a $40 million. He maxes out because he made All-NBA first team, all of this stuff. They're going to have some financial issues they have to deal with as well. And they got to decide if they want to keep Karl Anthony Towns, who's been the discussion of a lot of trade rumors. All right, they get the Celtics, do the Mavericks, in this NBA final. And I'm going to tell you right now, I 2 months ago, I thought the Mavericks were the team to watch out for. There isn't anything that's dissuaded for me. I think they beat the Celtics in this NBA final. I don't even think it goes 7. I'm going to say Mavericks win it on their home floor in 6. That's sort of where I am with this team right now. And the reasons are simple. Kyrie, boom. Luka, obviously. And the head coach, the advantage at head coach with Jason Kidd versus Joe Mazzulla. The Celtics don't have anybody. They don't have anybody that can disrupt what Luka's going to be able to do. They don't have anybody who has the experience in this spot that a Kyrie Irving has. And I love the pieces around this team. I'm going with the Mavericks in 6. I will say it right now.
It's very interesting. This is a tough finals from a betting perspective, obviously, with so much disparity between these two teams, and obviously the books now having a large liability on the Boston Celtics at this point. If you are betting it right, especially if you like the Dallas Mavericks, they're not going to win this series without winning game 1. So over on FanDuel, you can get the game 1 series parlay, and if you go Mavericks with that, it's 4-1, which is way better than the 2-1 that you're getting on the series price alone. So I would probably play that if you like the Mavericks. I would also look into Luka Doncic as the finals MVP at 2-1. That's not a bad price for a player who could win it with anything happening to that team. If you are looking to bet the Celtics, couple of interesting ways. Like I said, that game 1 series parlay, -140 for the Celtics. I would bet that if you're trying to bet the Celtics. I also like Jaylen Brown to win finals MVP at 6-1. That feels like a missed number. All
right, we're going to do a whole bunch more on this next week. We got to get to hockey on the other side. Rangers falling at home to the Panthers.
Over 13 million Americans were affected by identity theft in 2022, and the threats go way beyond just credit card fraud. Today's identity thieves can use your information in ways that are easy to miss by just monitoring accounts and credit, like opening loans, transferring home titles, even committing crimes.
Someone got my social security number, made a driver's license, and it was used for criminal activity.
You can do so much with a social security number that I didn't know could happen. They drained my bank account. It was terrifying.
You're even more vulnerable than you realize. Your information is exposed through online shopping, banking, even corporate data breaches. No wonder there's a new victim of identity theft every 3 seconds. Only LifeLock alerts you to the widest volume of threats all in one place, like someone trying to use your social security number, open a new loan in your name, or even commit a crime in your name.
There was a big yes button and there was a big no button. I clicked, "That's not me," and LifeLock took it from there.
If you become a victim of identity theft, a dedicated U.S.-based restoration specialist will be assigned to your case and work to fix the issue on your behalf.
If something happens, you have somebody fighting for you.
All LifeLock members are backed by the LifeLock $1 Million Protection Package, including reimbursement for stolen funds, personal expenses, and coverage for lawyers and experts up to $1 million. It can be dangerously easy to steal your identity. With LifeLock, it's easy to help protect yourself.
I will be with LifeLock forever.
Join the millions of people already protected by LifeLock. And for a limited time, save 25% on your first year with promo code 25TV. All plans include a 60-day money-back guarantee.
Call 800-710-7531.
Or visit lifelock.com/25TV to save 25% on your first year of identity theft protection. Enroll now.
Attention families with a loved one in a nursing home. If your loved one has suffered from bed sores, falls, broken bones, dehydration, or even death, you may be entitled to a substantial settlement. If you have a loved one who is injured in a nursing home, we will find out what happened. State violations are found against nursing homes every day. You have a limited time to file your claim, so don't wait. Call 800-398-5999 and speak with one of our attorneys. The call is confidential and free.
All right. Tino Pattigno drops by in 10 minutes. It's Friday. That means it is a NASCAR Friday with Tino Pattigno. Be curious to see what he thought of the Indy 500, the rain-shortened Coca-Cola 600, this week's race in Illinois, with a name that is way too long for me to sit here and try to remember. Let's talk some hockey. Sam Yarnell. I was bouncing around last night between the hockey, the basketball, and the Yankees dismantling the Angels, and Aaron Judge hitting another home run, and Carlos Rodon pitching really well, and this Yankee staff, which has lost Clark Schmidt now to a lat injury. Oh, I'm sorry, we're talking hockey. So let's talk about it. Florida Panthers putting the Rangers on the brink with a win last night in New York at Madison Square Garden. And here's a major question that I think you have to ask about this Ranger team. And maybe we were all colorblind to it, or maybe we were all, prisoner to the moment of this Rangers run to get to the conference finals. And look, this thing isn't over by any stretch. Are they capable of going into Florida and winning a Game 6? Of course they are. Do I think this winds up back at Madison Square Garden for a Game 7, which I think would be Monday night? I certainly hope so. I think they could wind up back there. But here's a question that the Rangers have to answer. They had, I think, an NHL high this year, 34 or 35 come from behind wins. And I think there's a question that has to be asked. Why do they have to always get down? Why do they always have to fall behind to get back up before something clicks in this team, where there's a sense of urgency, where there's this need to be down, to be the counterpuncher, rather than go and take it away from the other team? In a Game 5 like last night, I expected the Rangers to come out flying. They get a shorthanded goal thanks to a Tkachuk turnover. Well, I sound like Chris Russo trying to say Draisaitl right now. And the Rangers, have one goal through two periods of this game. And, Florida came out in the third period, and it was almost like they said, all right, enough of this. It's a wrap. And they were far more aggressive. They outshot the Rangers heavily over the first 15 minutes of that final period. And they wind up with a win in Game 5 at Madison Square Garden. And frankly, the final score wasn't even indicative of how bad it could have been if not for Shesterkin in net for the Rangers, who made some amazing saves in that third period, Sam Yarnell.
Yes, and he continues to work on that save prop that we bet before the series, and it continues to look good through 5 games of this series. Every time we talk about the Panthers, got to talk about Sam Bennett. Yep. Empty net goal last night and an assist as well on the tying goal in the second period to make it 1-1. He looked great. This Florida Panthers team is very, very good, man. It is all Igor Shesterkin that is keeping these Rangers in these games right now. Specifically last night, for as long as the Rangers were in the game, it was because of Igor Shesterkin. They did not have a lot going offensively. They constantly trailed the Panthers in shots, and that's been a recurring theme throughout every game of this series. It's hard to say that I want to bet the Rangers right now to come back and win this series. Florida just looks like they're starting to put the stranglehold on New York, and I don't know if New York can go into Florida and have Igor stand on his head yet again and come away with a win to force a game 7. I'm not sure about it, Jason. I think the Panthers are here to stay.
It's a day where I wish I had Bruce Beck on, because I would love to say to him, will somebody ask Peter Laviolette why this team just at times can completely go flat? I mean, flat-lined for such extensive portions of a hockey game. For a team that's as good, they won the President's Trophy. I mean, you want to talk about an enigma wrapped up in a mystery. I mean, that is the Rangers. I mean, they really are an enigma for a team that won a President's Trophy to kind of play the way they have all year. A risky way, a way that is so dependent on their goaltender. That's a lot to ask over an 80 game, 100 game season that you're essentially talking about. Let's visit the odds here for a second and talk about where we are in this series and in this Stanley Cup sort of picture here. Stanley Cup odds right now, the Panthers are the favorite to win it all now at plus 130. The Dallas Stars are plus 250. Edmonton at 300. And you can get the Rangers right now at 900. I think last night it was like 850. I think it's bumped up. 900 right now. You can get the Rangers at. Sprinkle, sprinkle? Do I hear sprinkle, sprinkle?
The thing is, Jason, I think both of the teams in the West would probably take down the Rangers. Obviously, a little bit more of a question with Edmonton because of how shaky Skinner's been in net. But if you give me a Stars-Rangers matchup, I think we're talking gentleman's sweep in that category. Stars-Panthers would be very interesting. I think that makes both of those numbers
interesting
a lot shorter.
Let me tell you something. Interesting only to hockey nuts, because that will be a low-rated NHL Stanley Cup Final. I mean, it's Gary Bettman right now is standing on the ledge at the offices in New York going, please don't give me Florida and Dallas or Edmonton and Florida. Oh my God. I mean, it's like his worst fear. It's his worst fear.
Edmonton would be good because the Canadian team hasn't won the Cup in so long.
If they were playing a major market U.S. team, I'd get it. But playing against Florida? Ugh.
Yeah.
That's going to be tough.
All that said, from a hockey perspective, it would be a lot of fun to watch the Stars-Panthers Stanley Cup Final, and I would probably bet the Stars in that series. I really think that this Ottinger goal, they're going to be able to ride that hot hand all the way to the Cup.
Well, just for the sake of talking about the odds tonight, it is Dallas minus 128, Edmonton plus 106. So we'll see how the Stars fare tonight with this game. Back in Big D. And we'll see what the Rangers do as well right now. You got the Rangers plus 140 for Saturday night's Game 6 in Sunrise, and the Panthers at minus 170. I still think that Rangers series is getting back to New York for Game 7, and then all bets are off. Sam will rejoin us in a few minutes, but it's time to talk NASCAR. Our friend Tino Pattigno is here. Get some thoughts with him on Kyle Larson's attempt at the double last weekend. This weekend's race in Illinois as well, as Sports Wrap continues. We proceed on this Friday. And if it's Friday, that can only mean one thing, ladies and gentlemen. It's a NASCAR Friday with this guy. Tino Pattigno is here, ladies and gentlemen. Fresh off his visit to Charlotte for the Coca-Cola 600, the rain-shortened Coca-Cola 600. Sorry that you went down there for your birthday and it was rain-shortened.
Yeah, it rained on my birthday. Like that, come on. What are we doing? That was tough.
Real quick here on the Indy 500, first of all, which was a terrific finish. Newgarden gets the win there. And then the rain shortened. Both of them impacted by rain, probably by the same storm, if I had to guess. Rain really impacting both of those. And Kyle Larson's attempt to run the double First of all, what did you think of how he ran? I thought I was impressed with what he was able to do in an Indy 500 for the first time. I mean, it was mind-blowing to me that and I know he had no chance to win, but with like 10 laps left, he actually led briefly, which was kind of cool to see. But missing out on the double because of the rain.
Yeah, and that was the most frustrating or disappointing part for the fans, but also for Kyle Larson. Kyle Larson's not a guy that shows much emotion, and I feel like that is shown on the racetrack as well, based off of just how much he's able to perform and go out and win each and every week. He's a very calm guy, but he tweeted out something that I thought was pretty surprising, where he just was like, explaining how upset he was that he did not get the finish that they deserved in the Indy 500, right? So we got called for speeding. He was racing inside the top 10 all day there. Mm-hmm. So that was one thing, but then going from that to not even be able to turn a single lap inside the Coke 600, just a brutal day for him overall, for someone that had such high expectations and so much, hype leading up to both events.
He says he wants to do it again next year. You believe him? You think he'll do it again next year?
Well, I definitely believe him. I hope it's next year, but it all comes down to the cost and if both teams are able to pull it off. I know everyone, if you're a motorsports fan, you want Kyle Larson, like the whole beauty of it, right? Like, it was great seeing him run in the Indy 500, but the whole thing is the double, right? Like, that's what we were talking about leading into it, was like, he may be the driver that gets the best finishes out of the double or whatever the case may be there, and definitely capable of winning both, and ultimately didn't even get to do that.
Yeah.
So to me, I want to see him. I want to see him race it again. There's other drivers that also now it's piqued their interest on both sides to maybe IndyCar come over to the Cup side or vice versa as well.
The gray area, as Joey Logano called it. What does NASCAR do now? Because he missed the race, which means he has to get a waiver from NASCAR in order to be in the playoffs. I can't see any scenario imaginable. Winning as much as he has this year, as popular as he is, I can't see any scenario where they say, "Yeah, you know what? We're gonna make you sit this one out." Do you?
No, I can't. I think NASCAR's kind of dragging this one along a little bit, just because of A, it being with Kyle Larson. Maybe B, they're a little bit, frustrated. He did decide, like, he had a choice. It was either Indy or the Coke 600, both crown jewel races in their each respective sport. Obviously, Indy 500 is bigger than the Coke 600 in that sense. It is one of the biggest sports spectacles every single year. But I thought that was a no-brainer for Kyle Larson to go to Indy and stay there and not go back to the Coke 600. But if NASCAR is going to continue to, for us to talk about it, for other people to mention it, and how big of Kyle Larson was the points leader at that point too, right?
Though, but it's great for the sport. Him racing in the Indy 500, it's great for the sport. It's great for that sport. It's great for this sport. It drew so much attention. It had me on the edge of my seat watching the rain, even with the rain, sitting there going, is he going to make it? Trying to figure out the time. Can he get there? And then he gets there and then he can't race. To me, it's a no-brainer for NASCAR. They may not be crazy about it because he misses the Coca-Cola 600, but a lot of that was weather-induced. And I know there's certain elements of this. Mother Nature is undefeated. We now know this. But I think it's a no-brainer for NASCAR. They got to put him in the playoffs. They can't mess around with this.
Yeah.
This isn't Chase Elliott. This isn't Chase Elliott going and skiing and hurting his leg in something non-NASCAR related.
Exactly. And that was my final point here too, was like, with you saying it being weather like induced related, like he didn't have a choice. Like he did have a choice, yes, but it was because of the weather. And I feel like if it was no weather involved, maybe let's say he goes to Indy and just is late, misses the race, whatever, like on his own accord. From that standpoint, makes sense. But like you said, with the weather being a factor, I think NASCAR will eventually make the right decision. But might as well string it along a little bit, get a little extra views out of the deal.
All right. Enjoy Illinois 300 this weekend. Kyle Larson is your favorite at 600 alongside Denny Hamlin, Martin Truex Jr. Just below those guys at 850. Ryan Blaney at 900 along with William Byron. Your top five, if you're looking at FanDuel, obviously do your price shopping. Who do you like this week? And talk a little bit about this racetrack in Illinois, in Madison.
Yeah, so for the track itself, this one's interesting because we've only raced here 2 times before in the Cup Series. It's been a new add to the schedule. The racing's been pretty good at this track. A 1.25 mile long track as well, and it's interesting too because we can't really compare it to that many tracks as well. But the ones that we can talk about are Richmond, Phoenix, and New Hampshire. In terms of it being a flatter track, and it suits the driving style of Kyle Larson, Denny Hamlin, the favorites that we're talking about as well. With Kyle Larson, just to touch on him quickly, I feel like he's extra motivated to go out and just win this one with how much everyone's talking about him and how disappointed he was last weekend. So that's just something to keep in mind. It could be a Larson-dominated show here. But Ryan Blaney's the driver on my eye on in this one. Plus 850, yes. He's one of the guys that's finished inside the top 6 in both races that we've had at this track thus far. Phoenix is also one of his, if not he's the best driver at Phoenix in the entire series thus right now in recent years. So with that being a comparable track, one thing I need to note too with Blaney is he finished dead last at the Coke 600, right? They had a problem with the car, didn't able to keep it going. And why I mention that is he's the type of guy that when he gets pissed off, he capitalizes the next race. We saw it last year in Texas. He got involved in a wreck. Very next weekend, wins at Talladega. So that's just something I have my eye on with Blaney. Truex is another driver as well where you got to keep an eye on him in this one.
How about Kyle Busch? 1,400? Last year's winner? Some thoughts on Kyle real quick here? I got 20 seconds.
Yeah, so for Kyle Busch, it's worth it to put a little bit of units on him just because of his success at this track. But he's been so streaky thus far this season where it scares me a little bit.
This is the streak. This is where he goes upwards. I'm going with Kyle Busch. We'll talk to you next week.
Yes, sir. Thanks for having me. We're
coming back. Something to consider. We'll have that coming up for you in about 10 minutes. So I was looking, just so people know, I was looking at the wrong thing. I was looking at the series prices when we were talking about that at the end of the last segment. Edmonton at home on Friday night. Obviously, Game 6 back in Dallas on probably Sunday night, I would presume, as all of these have gone every other day. So we'll see where the series is at that point. Obviously, you still have Edmonton as an underdog tonight, being that the game is in Dallas. But certainly where the game is being played makes a big difference. So you gamble at your own peril. Sam Yarnell with us. After we got a dose of Tino Pattigno, the caffeine jolt that is Tino Pattigno. New segment on the show, by the way. New segment on the show that I want to welcome people to. It's called Sports Represent Stephen A. Said What? Yesterday on the show, you might recall, we talked briefly about, at the end of the show, the fact that Jalen Waddle's getting this, I think it's like $83 million 3-year deal. It'll put him in the upper echelon in terms of top paid receivers. We are happy for him. And so was Stephen A. Smith yesterday, who took an opportunity while talking about the Jalen Waddle, Tyreek Hill combination to take a little subtle shot at Tua Tagovailoa. Listen as Stephen A. congratulates Jalen Waddle and then says, what?
The way him and Tyreek Hill feed off of one another makes them incredibly potent. I think they need another bigger receiver that would be helpful, somebody that's going to be highly productive for them at the tight end spot, highly reliable. And I get that too, because they got a quarterback that needs their greatness, their skill set. And obviously Tua feeds off of that because of his ability to throw the deep ball. But in intermediary routes and things of that nature, he might struggle a little bit because of his size and seeing over the line of scrimmage.
Get him outside of basketball, and there we go. Get him talking about anything other than basketball, and he could have just stopped with, hey, Tyreek and Jalen Waddle, this is great. These guys are nice. They work well together. And I agree, by the way, they do need a tight end, but had to take a shot. And he's not a Tua guy. We should preface that by saying he's never been a Tua guy. But this idea that he can't see over the line, that he can't throw over the middle, the numbers simply don't bear it out. We pulled up the next gen stats on this. Thanks to NFL for that. You look at the numbers, he had 114.3 passer rating, throwing the ball over the middle, 106.4 over the middle. All of his numbers are above the league average. Obviously, he is better downfield because and having a guy like Tyreek Hill will help do that. But it's another example of being overexposed. Great, you want to talk about the NBA, and I was listening to him talk about the NBA today. I thought he made some great points on this T-Wolves Mavericks series and talking about the greatness of Luka. But what are you talking about? I mean, by almost, and look, are people going to question whether or not Tua on the road, and we could have that conversation about Tua on the road versus at home, warm, confines of Miami, all of that. We can have that conversation to a degree, although I still even think the numbers on that sometimes are, don't necessarily bear it out, but fine. But to sit there and say he can't throw over the middle because he can't see over the line? Come on, man.
Yeah, so let me take you to school, Stephen A. Smith, because I've been on this Tua hater train for a long time, and I think it's the right place to be when you're looking at the grand scheme of the Miami Dolphins, right? And I think this Jalen Waddle contract only accentuates that. I don't think that his point is necessarily wrong. The Miami Dolphins are, in fact, putting money in all of the wrong places and trying to use Band-Aids to fix things that need surgery. But saying that Tua Tagovailoa struggles in intermediate passing over the middle is quite literally the opposite of the argument as to why Tua is not a good quarterback. When you look at stats like air yards per throw and average depth of target, ADOT, Tua Tagovailoa is very clearly an intermediate over the middle passing merchant. And a lot of the deep throws that Tua Tagovailoa makes are actually intermediate throws over the middle that he has some of the most incredibly athletic wide receivers in the NFL run for a very long time after the catch on. This is not the correct take from Stephen A. Maybe this was the third take or the fourth take or the 377th take this week. It definitely wasn't the first take. I don't like Tua. He is definitely the problem in Miami. There's no question about that. They've got a bridge quarterback as their franchise starter right now.
I think you're crazy. I think you're so crazy. I don't know how you could call him a bridge quarterback. Who would you
Stephen
like?
A, regardless, not correct.
But who would you like down there? Who would you like down there more? Because remember, you have to have, if you're going to say not Tua, then who?
What?
If not
Who
Tua,
in the
if not
NFL?
Tua, no. Who can you get? And that doesn't make him a bridge quarterback.
Right now, I think that's different. But had they gone out and signed Kirk Cousins this offseason, completely different story
hell
in Miami.
to the no, I'm not signing Kirk Cousins. Who can't win in prime time, Kirk Cousins? That Kirk Cousins?
Did you not see what Kirk Cousins did with Justin Jefferson and nobody in the backfield last year before he got hurt?
They lost to the Giants in the postseason the year before.
You're going to put him in that offense? Nah. Kirk Cousins would be great in Miami.
Sorry, Stephen A. We're coming back. Odds and ends right around the corner on the show. Ryan Garcia and his positive test for performance-enhancing drugs under the spotlight. Want to get to that. Also, why golf is so humbling. The Nelly Corda edition. All us Sunday hackers are probably smiling a little bit. But first, something to consider, Sam Yarnell. Something to consider. Look, they're 1-8. We're basically a quarter of the way through the WNBA season. The Indiana Fever are 1-8. And I was trying to think of a comparison to Caitlin Clark coming in with all of the hullabaloo that sort of surrounds her as her career starts. She had 20 points, 9 assists last night. So the scoring is there, and, she's filling up stat sheets. The problem is also, though, she's leading the league in turnovers, 5.9 turnovers a game. So basically 6 turnovers a game. That's a problem. And something she's obviously going to have to work on as we continue to go through the season. She played almost every minute last night as well. And I have to wonder if at some point all of this is going to catch up to her, and you're just going to have a burnout where you're going to have to sit her for a week or 2 weeks. Now, I don't know if she's going to be playing in the Olympics. I don't think they've announced yet the Olympic team for the women. And I know there's some ideas of whether or not she's going to be on that Olympic team or not. But I was trying to think last night of something to compare it to, Sam, and the thing I came up with was actually very recent. It's Wemby. It's Victor Wembanyama, who came in, much ballied, and everybody wondered what it was going to look like. And by the end of the year, he was really on the sort of front of our minds when you talk about the way he played, the numbers he put up, all of that. But the team sucked. And I don't know if it's going to be the same with her, because I think there's going to be some burnout at some point. And I'm not rooting for this. I'm rooting for her to succeed, because if she succeeds, it's better for the WNBA. But I just don't know if she can continue this pace, the number of minutes, all of the spotlight being on. You had 15,000 again last night in Indianapolis for this game. I just think there's a wall coming. I don't know if it's in another 10 games, another 15 games, where it happens, but I feel like there's a wall somewhere in here.
Yeah, Jason, I think the reality of the situation with the Fever is that Caitlin Clark just needs a better supporting cast. Not necessarily better. I shouldn't say that. She needs her supporting cast to kind of step up. We were all relying on Aaliyah Boston. It's funny, I was actually just having a conversation with somebody who's very close to the WNBA yesterday about this. They expected so much out of Aaliyah Boston this year, and she's actually regressed. She's taken a step back in her career from her rookie year. So that is something that nobody was counting on, and I think has been kind of a huge letdown in terms of the Fever in the grand scheme of things. Also, talking about Kelsey Mitchell, right? They were expecting to get more assists out of Kelsey Mitchell. It seems like Kelsey Mitchell hasn't helped Caitlin as much in terms of facilitating the ball. Yes, the turnovers are high for Caitlin, and yes, she is leading the league, and that is a problem. But she is assisting quite a bit as well. And when you look at her assist to turnover ratio, it's right there with the rest of her team. The problem with this team is that they're becoming too one-dimensional. They're turning into Iowa basketball, which I think all of us knew was not going to be successful in the WNBA. You've got to play WNBA basketball with Caitlin Clark. You can't bring Caitlin Clark basketball to the WNBA. It's not how that kind of thing works. So there is a little bit of a big change that needs to happen. A little bit of a big change. There's a wholesale change that needs to happen with this Fever team. They've got to figure out how to construct this roster in a way that complements Caitlin Clark better and maximizes production out of the role players if they want to see the most success.
I think it's easier to do that after the first year. I think there's going to be some adjustments and some tweaks. And I don't think it's surprising, by the way, that Aaliyah Boston takes a step backwards before learning how to play with Caitlin Clark. 9 games, not a huge sample. They don't have a big WNBA preseason schedule. So I'd give that another 10 to 15 games before we see sort of where that is. Another interesting note from women's basketball, though, yesterday, and this was announced. I think it's brilliant. The WNBA is trying to keep their players, and women's basketball is trying to keep their players from having to go play overseas during the offseason like they do, avoiding the Brittany Griner situation that we saw a couple of years ago. They're starting, and this is being started by Breanna Stewart and Nafisha Collier, new 3-on-3 women's basketball league called Unrivaled. It's got a ton of money behind it. Including Steve Nash, Carmelo Anthony, Alex Morgan, Megan Rapinoe, Michelle Wee West, Ashton Kutcher, and my man Gino Auriemma at the University of Connecticut. I think this is a brilliant idea. I think the time is now to strike on women's basketball. And I think 3-on-3 is going to be a lot more exciting than some of the brand that the WNBA has to offer. You're going to have a lot more floor, a lot of open space. You're going to, and you're only going to have the very best players playing in that sort of league because you're only going to have 3. I think it's going to be fun. I think it's going to have a lot of appeal. I think it can do well.
I'm with you. I think it's good. And we've kind of seen this across women's sports, right? Like Athletes Unlimited did this back in 2022 with an option for WNBA players to stay stateside and play professional basketball. They do the same thing in softball for the best players in college softball to continue playing professionally. It's great for women's sports. It's growing the game, and you love to see it. Hopefully it prevents a future Brittany Griner type of incident.
I don't know why any player in their right mind would go play overseas in Russia after what happened to her. We're coming back with odds and ends. Garcia, Korda, they're in the spotlight next. All right, just about time to put the wraps on this baby for a Friday. Before we do, a reminder, make sure to check out the podcast, Sports Wrap with Jason Page podcast. It's available on all your favorite podcasting platforms. Spotify, Google Play, Apple Podcasts, iHeartRadio, TuneIn, you name it. We are on them. For some reason on the TuneIn one, it still says Cash In with Jason Page for the logo. I have no idea why, and I don't know how to fix it. Help me, TuneIn, help me. All right, without any further delay, time for some odds and ends. Odds and ends, Sam Yarnell. Not saying we owe Ryan Garcia an apology, because we don't. Because you are still responsible for what you're putting into your body and looking at, like, I don't know, an ingredients bottle. But he did say from the start, since he tested positive, after this fight with Haney, with Devin Haney, where he won, and then he didn't get the title because he was overweight, but tested positive for performance-enhancing drugs. Osterine was the drug that he tested positive for. He pointed from day one to supplements, saying it had to have come from something that was in his supplements that he didn't know about. Well, it turns out 2 supplements that he took, 2 bottles, came back positive for Osterine. So again, not saying we owe him an apology, because you are responsible, and even according to WADA, you are responsible for what you put in and the anti-doping agency and all these people, you are responsible for what you put in your body. But here's the thing. If this is proven to be true, which it looks like as of now it is, his suspension could be drastically reduced. As opposed to a year or 2 years, it could be something where we see him fighting again before the end of the year, which obviously would be a rematch against Devin Haney, which is what everybody wants to see. So I think it's important on this show. A lot of times we do a story in media. We do a story and then we don't revisit it. We don't come back to it. I thought it was important to come back to this story because we've reported on the test for performance-enhancing drugs being positive. We've talked about his reaction to it, which he's off the reservation on in terms of his behavior and all of that stuff, and that's fine. But I think it's important that we also follow up when there is a development in a story like this that says, hey, it might have been the supplements.
It might have, yeah, definitely. I think it's always important to remember these kinds of things when you just always go back to the steroid era of baseball, right? Like you always draw it back to the steroid era of baseball, and did all those guys know exactly what they were doing and how they were doing it, or were they just listening to these doctors who were being paid very well, and so on and so forth. You know, this is never going to stop being a problem, right? Like, do you ever expect this to not be a problem in sports? No. There's always going to be someone trying to cheat, and there's always going to be someone trying to catch them. It's just kind of the duality of sport.
I think guys are going to. I think guys have gotten a lot smarter though in terms of knowing what they're putting in their body. There aren't a lot of these sorts of cases.
Well, as you know, we talk about across sports, that's just the theme of technology, right? It's the technology of what you're putting into your body. And as it continues to grow, the level of that sport continues to get better. That's not going to stop anytime soon. And you're going to continue to have these kinds of doping scandals as long as there are people who think they can get away with it.
Nelly Korda, Women's U.S. Open. She had a 10 yesterday. She carded a 10. Not a snowman 8. No. On a par 3, Nelly Korda, the best player in the world, had a 10. She pulled a tin cup. I mean, wow. It just goes to prove yet again. Golf, man, of all the sports, nothing will humble you like golf. I mean, she's hitting shots out of the sand, into the water, across the green. Then she's chipping from across the water, chips it back into the water. Not going to lie, there are a lot of people probably smiling. A lot of Sunday morning golfers probably smiling when they see this happen to Nelly Korda, because we've all been there.
Yep, that's true, Jason. Listen, this clearly took a toll on Nelly. And if you look at her scorecard outside of that, she had a very normal round for Nelly Korda. There was a lot of reporting that she was, super distraught after this. How could you not be at the Women's U.S. Open?
Look at her.
But, you just hope that she's able to overcome it and get back to playing the golf that we know she's capable of. You hope that one hole can't ruin her whole weekend, but it very well has a chance to.
I'll give you one. City Championship, Stanley Golf Course, 2010. I'm at my peak playing golf. I'm playing like 3-4 times a week. I got my handicap under a 10. We get to the 9th hole. I'm like 1 over. Like, I'm playing well. I'm like 1 over through 9. Par 5. Pipe one down the middle. Lay up. I'm like 100, maybe 95 yards out from the green. Line 2. I get up. Take my 52 degree. I scull it over the green, over the patio, right in front of the restaurant. Penalty. My whole round went away. It was terrible. It was absolutely terrible.
Always
I
happens
carded
like that.
carded like a 9. Rest of the round was garbage. Hopefully this show wasn't garbage, though. We appreciate you tuning in. Thanks to Tino Pattigno for stopping by. Thanks to you, Sam Yarnell. Have a great weekend, my friend. We'll see you all back here next week.
Monday.
Yeah, we'll see you all back here next week for more Sports Wrap.